Well, hello there, and welcome to the Modern Job Search Checklist. This is Mark Anthony Dyson, and usually I'm joined by my co-host Damian Burkle, who is working out some little kinks in his appearance and his audio. So we should see him in just a moment. Want to bring on my man Jeff Altman, former recruiter, now career coach, and of course he owns JobSearchTV.com. And believe it or not, he probably has like three times the content than anybody else I know. I mean, I thought I produce a lot of content. This dude has thousands of articles. He has thousands of videos. I believe he has about 7,000 videos or more than that now, Jeff.
It's
And
just under
he,
seven.
yeah, and he's been in the recruiting game for 40 years. And now, so you're talking about somebody who's been an OG in the space. He knows every trick in the book, just about. So between me and when Damien gets on, he'll be able to throw his 30 some years in. I'm the baby of the group, so I'm just going to probably just be a witness to that conversation. But nevertheless, Jeff and I are going to get the show started. Again, we stream to LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. So if you don't catch us here, you can catch us on the Modern Job Search Checklist Facebook page, which is available, and you can catch a live stream there if you don't want to sit on LinkedIn and listen to the babble that will be going on in the chat. If you're in the chat now, join us. Put your comments in, put your questions in, because we're going to be talking about why everybody's quitting and is it good for everybody. And uh, don't forget, as a lot of people quit, there's also increasing competition, which can make your strategy pretty interesting. So we're going to get started. Jeff Altman, how are you, sir?
I feel really well today. It's
Good.
so good to see you. It's been 100 years.
Yes, it's been about 100 years. So we're old friends back in the old podcast West. So we really know each other and know each other's work. And believe it or not, the first time I heard Jeff was when Damien was on Jeff's show, and it was Jeff's second show or podcast and interviewing folks. So we're talking about a lot of history between the three of us, and we're going to share that vibe with you. So please feel free to welcome again. Ask questions, help each other, talk to each other. Let's have this increased conversation. This is why we do the live stream. So, Jeff, we are in the middle of two big hashtags that are running amok on Twitter and LinkedIn. And one is the big shift, and the other one is the great resignation. And as you probably know, there's all the talk of all those folks who resigned back in April. They estimated about 4 million had resigned. Now, um, should how should job seekers approach that? Let me get your take on that question first. That wasn't part of the outline, but I want to hear your take first on it because I know you've got opinions and you've got lots of them stashed away in your back pocket.
So I'm always a believer that you're better looking for a job when someone else is paying you. And
Hmm.
part of the reason is you lose leverage when you're unemployed.
Hmm.
Now, as much as the media is telling us that there is a shortage of labor, I'll also tell you that the Labor Department reported last month that there was negative wage growth, which is fascinating
Hmm.
because part of the propaganda is always, they don't want to work.
Right.
And I think there are bigger issues than they don't want to work. Um,
Yeah.
it, it
Yeah.
when
It's always made to be the job seeker to be the victim and also the one who's preying upon employers like that actually can happen.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Same
So
conversation, different recession.
the statistic I've also seen is that 60% of the workforce wants to find a new job.
Hmm.
That one I think came from LinkedIn, as a matter of fact.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so we start with the premise of it's complicated,
Hmm.
and we continue on with part of your leverage as a job hunter is the fact that you're working because you don't have to do anything. And from an employer's perspective, And I want to say I was part of the original creation of this, is the notion of the myth of the passive applicant.
Yeah.
Because employers believe that if you're actively looking for work, you are less desirable to hire than someone who is doing their job, keeping their head down, doing the work, and not actively looking, which really makes no sense
Right.
when you think about it.
Right.
So if you become one of those among the 60% who quits their job, you lose that piece of leverage in the psychology as well as in the financials as well. Because when employers believe that they can extend an offer under two conditions,
Mm-hmm.
leave it and take it,
Right.
it's harder to negotiate because
Mm-hmm.
they always believe that there's someone else out there who will take the money that they're offering. So you're better off, I believe, not quitting unless you're being brought back to an environment where you're going to be at risk. You're a person who's been perpetrated against in the workplace in some way, in which case I believe you get the heck out of there immediately. But that's a different part of the conversation. We're talking in the general parameters of, should I go back to work?
Right.
You know,
Right. Yeah, it's complicated because everybody is looking out for their own self-interest and their own weight. Uh, Job
and they
seekers
should.
really, and rightfully should, but I think, it's funny, the rest of us who are watching, who are not in this great big hunt and shift on either side, you know, everybody's got to make a case, and they want some empathy, and they want people to they want to take sides, whether they admit it or not. But I think ultimately job seekers have to be much shrewd and have to always, whether you're looking with or without a job, you've got to take the side of being shrewd and very judicious about your opportunities. And of course, the best situation ever is when you have also the option to walk away from bad options.
Amen. You know, when the recruiter calls or they reach out to you on LinkedIn, I'm a
Mm,
believer that you should never say, leave me alone, I'm not interested.
right.
And even if you are interested, you shouldn't instantly respond and go, yeah, I really, yeah, tell me more. I
Yeah.
want you to play it a little cool, because that way it infers to them that you're not actively looking, unless that you have that open to work thing on LinkedIn or they find your resume on a job board. So we can't fool around with those. But assuming that you're being recruited, be a little cool. Make them try and persuade you so that this way you can hear about the role and ask questions about the role and then commit to it and thus present as that passive job hunter that they prefer in this kind of in all markets actually, but particularly in this one. If you're part of 60% who's out there looking for a job, boy, it's like being at a singles bar, and there's a lot of people of the other sex are there, or of your sex if that's your orientation, and the result winds up being, you're not as desirable. So got to take advantage of the mentality on the other side. I lost audio from you. Oh no, I'm not hearing you. So you're hearing me. So I'm going to continue on until you can get that resolved. And um, Mark is playing a little bit to try and resolve his technical issue. And I'm not hearing your microphone, and you're hearing me. So this is interesting. No audio. So let me continue on until I do hear you. Is that okay?
Yet,
Now I do.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, this is very strange. So I'm just wondering how this is going to all work. Can you hear me now?
I hear you perfectly.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I do.
Okay, go ahead.
So I'll just simply say, for you as a job hunter, your job is to be marketable. And
Mm-hmm.
in being marketable, you want to attract people to you so
Yeah.
that you have choices. And you can attract people to you in a lot of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea is to be attractive, not to always be, you know, I'm out there looking, I'm out there looking, and help me, help me, help me, help me find the job. You don't want to come across as the desperate date. You want to always come across as the person that they want to pursue
Right.
rather than you pursuing them.
Right. Damien, can we hear you now?
I don't know. Can you
Yes.
hear me?
Yay! We can hear you. Good deal. So I was just poking and prodding a little bit with Jeff in his view. You probably heard already, and you probably even guessed where he is with it. But ultimately, yeah, I agree with the analogy. I definitely like the analogy. I was just thinking about how I don't know. Remember seeing or hearing Mel Brooks's skit about the 2,000-year-old man, and the idea that it was all men until they say, "Here's the first woman there," and say, "Hey, there's a girl in the crowd," and that's where that's where it's all of it at is like, employers can do all the talking, but yet the last voice, and sometimes it feels like the loneliest voice, is the job seeker who's saying, "Well, wait a second, what about me?" And and they forget. And I think this is a time now they're actually having a little bit more leverage universally than they ever. Mind you, we know about the guy that keeps his head down and gets post. We got that part, but I think there's a part too where people are they don't have as much leverage, but I think there's a small window now where they can say if they're willing to walk away from a job and willing to say that's not enough money, then they can go ahead and have some of that power to be able to continue on for a very productive job search.
I
Damien,
agree. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
go ahead, Damien.
What I was going to say is I agree, but kind of going back to where I came in, you have to have the right mindset.
Yes.
You can't just get fed up with your boss or your job and walk out, and then like Jeff was talking about being coming across as a desperate job seeker because it
Mhm.
will come across in everything, especially when you interview. If you have the right frame of mind, if you have prepared, if you are up on how to effectively job search now in this current time, you can utilize the leverage that you have, but you have to be prepared, you have to be strategic, and you have to have the opportunity in the market because it is not equal opportunity going all the way across. In some of the research that I did, and in reading some of Jeff's articles, there is a tremendous glut of opportunity, if you will, in the service industry, in the fast food industry, in the restaurant industry,
Mhm.
and to a lesser degree in various other segments of the market. But my advice is look before you leap.
Yeah, yeah. I would say look very carefully before you leap, and we have more access to more intel about an employer and about a job than we ever had. Jeff.
It's amazing what's going on out there.
Yeah.
And like for example, there was an announcement from the chairman of Morgan Stanley in
Hmm.
the last week or
Yeah.
two, where he basically gave the firm 75 days notice. You're coming back after Labor Day, or else.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, a lot of people have given that notice,
Right.
so but he's the loudest voice because we also known him to backtrack in the past years of what he says. We're going back to work. Last year it was we're going back to work this summer, and what happened?
Not so fast.
Yeah, not so fast, right? So we know, okay, we got the bravado part, but I think one of the things that we should talk about is heeding how much the Great Resignation is And a lot of it, I've heard people say this is all talk because of Ultimate, but I don't think it's so much all talk. It is much for if somebody has prepared the right way and prepared very deeply instead of trying to prepare for a whole bunch of opportunities that they can actually walk and make some moves forward in a way that they never had before. Damien, your spot?
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think one of the things that is different now than ever before is folks have had 12 months, 15 months
Hmm.
to think about who they are, where they're going, what they want to do next. So in that time, they could have easily come to the conclusion that where they are right now is not where they want to be, and it's a true call to action. But again, that's fine. You can make that decision, and good for you. But again, you have to be prepared. You have to do your homework. You have to have all of the tools for the modern job search, if you will, before you start. And in fact, people may have already started, and I think that's great. But you want to make sure you're doing it the right way and not out there flailing, if you will.
I
Yeah, I
absolutely
totally
agree.
agree. Jeff, go ahead.
Thank you. You know, I'm not sure people have been thinking about it all that much unless they were out of work. Because I think a lot of folks have their head down in fear, and it's perfectly understandable. But now we're at a different point. And as soon as we start to see the vaccinations increase, as soon as we start to hear about 95% approval, 90% efficacy, I should say, and suddenly the mask mandates are lifted in most of the country,
Hmm.
that should have been the opening salvo that if you're thinking about a change, this is the time to start networking again because it's easy.
Right,
Everyone wants to talk.
right.
Everyone's kind of, ooh, this is weird. I don't have to have a mask and have a conversation with someone. I have a couple of mine still next to me, but
Hmm.
you know, we can go back to some degree of normalcy. And this becomes an easy time to network. It
Yeah,
becomes an easy way to reach out to people and start reconnecting. How have you been? Oh, it's been so long. Hope you're okay. Any problems? Thank goodness. And talk about the kids and the family and just reconnect with folks. And that becomes the opening salvo for the real conversations around work in the second or third conversation.
yeah, I really believe that's true, and you may be right, Jeff. Not. I don't think not as many people. We would hope that everybody would have taken advantage of that window of opportunity. That window of opportunity is now closing. And I think one is the fact that that job seekers have this opportunity to learn and to be able to get deep on certain skills and upskill and reskill and whatever term you want to use for all that. But I think the other thing too is that the window is also closing because with a lot of job openings come a whole lot of competition. So if you're not used to being competitive and knowing what other people are doing, people who are doing getting jobs successfully, you don't know that how they're doing that, then you really don't have a lot of uh, intel, so to speak, to really work off of. Though it doesn't take a lot, it does help to know, whether you're looking relevant or how you're appearing and how you're coming across online, how you're coming across in person, which really online counts a whole lot more now, being that there's still a lot of virtual interviews that are happening. Your thoughts, Jeff?
What I see is that with the labor market hearing that there are not a lot of people out there, white collar labor is very competitive.
Hmm.
Non white collar, no collar, blue collar, uh,
Hmm.
there's there's a shortage of people. So in
Hmm.
the white collar markets, a lot of jobs, a lot of people. In the no collar field, like restaurants or certain types of fulfillment jobs. Like my son does e-commerce fulfillment for his firm. And it's one of the areas that LinkedIn points to as being above average growth. Like the percentage of jobs was almost 200% year over year in terms of the increase. And for people who are in healthcare, in no collar jobs, there's no people out there. Like if you work in a restaurant, you can pretty well pick where you want to go to work at this point because so many restaurateurs can't find people.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, and hotels and all that, all those related industries, who were the first to let go, which I would think that at some point there might have been a great rehiring in the sense that they're looking. You look at the people you first laid off. Now they may say no, but there's a percentage of them that would say yeah, and that might be the lower hanging fruit. Damien, do you have any thoughts on that and what Jeff said?
Oh no, I agree about the, for lack of a better term, glut of opportunity for
Mhm.
no collar, blue collar. The other thought that I had is, do you remember the movie Network? I think that's what it was called,
Mhm.
where he raises the window and says, "I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it any longer."
Yeah.
Um, I bring that up because I'm thinking about I read the same article that Jeff did, where he said 75 days you will be back in the office, and I think what's different now is that the reaction of you can't tell me that I have to be in your office anymore, and what I mean by that is if you've lost a family member to COVID or someone you know or whatever, your life has been forever changed. And that changes the way that you think, changes the way that you look at the world, and also changes the way that you react to a bully boss or a
Mhm.
bully chairman.
Mhm.
And my thought is that that's going to be a mistake because yes, people will go back in fear of their jobs, and fear can drive short-term results, but not long-term results. And as we were saying before, there is opportunity in the white collar market, and this new attitude, if you will, as a result of COVID and the loss of loved ones. Um, the ability to tolerate bully bosses, I think, has gone down as a
Mhm.
result of COVID, and could also be a reason that's driving more white collar people to look for jobs. Opportunity plus bully boss equals new job.
Yeah. Well, I just wonder too. One of the things I didn't count on as I was coming up with our outline was yesterday that it really we're headed towards quite a large look at inflation and how inflation is going to really affect the jobs. Just think about it. There's a shortage for about everything that we have, especially products that are actually manufactured. I mean, my wife and I went to help our son go look for a couch, and he picked several couches that there was a back order on, and some of them have been back ordered since October. So
Wow.
you figured that there are that employers going to have to do one or two things. And I'm not the mathematician on how inflation works, but I do know that if you want to make more product fast, you've got to create more labor opportunities. And if you don't create the labor opportunities, there's going to be a shortage, which usually means then now the prices of everything has to be jacked up until there is enough labor and there's enough to go around for everybody. So uh, ultimately, we are in a window that is just not because the opportunities just seem plentiful at the time, but also in the long term, that window is very small, I think. And it's not only because that there's the competition, it would be a land grab for those who are in the industries that where there's a lot of jobs, but even a smaller window for the people who are white collars who may have to manage the supply, so to speak. Jeff?
I think also in terms of, like in your circumstance, there are supply chain issues
Mm-hmm.
that cause some of the problems with having those couches ready. But from a labor perspective, we're in an unusual time, quite obviously. And I want to try and get people into their new roles now.
Mm-hmm.
And I say now because there's going to be another recession coming. I don't know exactly when, but there'll be another one, year and a half, 2 years
Oh,
out.
I think you're absolutely correct. I think it's going to come quicker than the other ones in the past. Usually, we have a window of a few years before the next one comes. Usually, it's been like every 10 years, roughly, if I'm not mistaken. But then again, this is not the usual time that we've had where there's a shortage of everything.
Until the last two cycles, they came more frequently than 10 years. The last two have been 10-year cycles, which has been great. We've all
Right,
enjoyed
right.
stability. We're not going to have stability now
No,
because,
no, I agree with that.
and without it being political, the difference between our current administration and the previous one is sufficiently profound that if there's a snapback with the next one, it becomes a shocking change yet again, and the economy doesn't handle it all that well. As it is now, it's struggling to adjust to this one, and that's again no criticism. I'm not getting political here.
Right.
I'm
No,
just
no, you're not.
I'm just
I don't
looking in
think so.
terms of American business doesn't like change. They like
Right.
stability, and
Yes.
we have not had stability now from an economic standpoint for 15 months plus.
Hmm.
To me, it won't be fully over until the fall when all the children are back in school again, and thus there's free childcare for so many Americans at that point.
Yeah.
And then we'll really know where things are. But again, I keep thinking that we're going to have a recession sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
I'm not forecasting when, but I want to get people into new roles now so they can cut their teeth, make their reputations now or as soon as possible, so that this way it's harder to cut them as the last one in, first one out.
Yeah.
Right.
And,
Right.
and I think to Damien's point, and Damien, you've said this, and uh, looking for the long term, that should you may someone can get hired now and in 6 months be out. This would be like a Christmas cycle in the sense that there's a lot of rehiring and a lot of hiring, and then say, oh, we don't have enough hours, so we've got to cut back hours or let people go. And that's usually the trend when you see retail and other industries. David, your premise, I think, about being ready to job search this time and maybe next time 6 to 9 months, it could be very real and it could happen pretty fast. So that's why people not only need to prepare for now, they also need to prepare forever.
Right. Right. And you kind of have a honeymoon going on right now because people have been
Yeah.
so pent up
Hmm.
and pent up need, and now they're beginning to feel safe going into stores, going out to dinner, etc. So you have this, for lack of a better term, frenzy going
Hmm.
on that's creating shortages, and things are getting more expensive. I had someone come over and look at our deck yesterday. The cost of wood is 3 times what it was less than 6 months ago. And we made the decision right there to wait until next summer because he said the cost of wood and everything has got to come down once this frenzy of activity is over with. And so goes the job market. I mean, there's a frenzy of activity, but boy, I'll tell you, you have a couple burps in the economy, and you will have people out job searching 6 months after they just got uh, hired, which kind of goes back to the old Boy Scout motto of be prepared. Be prepared at all times. Never let your job search guard down, and always be thinking about building and retraining your skills so that you'll be ready whenever the next hit comes to your career. Because the bottom line is that there's no such thing as job security anymore. Job security comes from within. It's your job to keep your tools polished, oiled, and shiny at all times, so that when the inevitable comes, you'll be able to hit the ground running and not be at a total loss and have to start completely over again.
Yeah. So Jeff, this kind of aligns with the first topic is that, and I think you indicated a little bit here. We moved too fast, didn't we? The employers were kind of hasty going into this. And it appears that nobody really understands the full gravity of what reopening really means. They thought that freedom means jobs, and that's what everybody interpreted. But nobody kind of read the report on the back end. Your thoughts on?
It's the economy is complicated. Life is complicated. There's no playbook for this. And that's one of the hard things for business to understand. There's no playbook. And when there was a playbook before this, really wasn't all that good. So I go with the premise that people start to think that, let's see now, there we go. I was out of the room there for a second. Employers think that they interview well. To me, they don't. They have this crazy notion that they can evaluate for fit. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, they can't. And I say that because within 18 months of someone coming on board, there's a statistic that more than 65% of hiring managers have buyer's remorse. And then job hunters are no different. And thus, in the haste here, in the hurry to land in the new role, people's impetuousness on both sides of the transaction risk causing even more problems. They're going to result in another cycle of turnover.
Hello?
Yeah. Damien?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Trying to determine a culture in an organization when you're on the outside looking in is very difficult. And you can have a situation like I had, I don't know, about 10 years ago, where the culture was one way when I walked in the door, and then there was a management shakeup, and it went from a culture of acceptance where older adults were revered to an atmosphere of fear, and that older adults, educated like myself, career counselors, were a liability. And within a 6-month period, anybody that had experience or education was just mowed down in a very calculated way so that they could hire in basically high school grads or people fresh out of college and train them in such a narrow way that as long as you followed the playbook, you were fine. But that life experience, that ability to work with people, that ability to establish rapport was no longer valued. And all of a sudden they found out that the greatest amount of talent was suddenly out on the street, and there was a free fall in the organization as a result. So I can understand buyer's remorse. One day I went in and it was heaven. The next day I went in and it was hell. So I'm with you.
And then we're around the issue of ageism in all of this. And that's old and young, where each side has a perspective that the younger workers are digital natives. For them, they're very facile at things. Older workers think they know it all. and I hate to be blunt, but they think they know everything about how everything should be done because they've been through a lot. And
but
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say that I wish that job seekers were more into the anticipation game than they are in the trend game. You know what I mean? Everybody got up and said, "I'm ready to leave," all at the same time. But if you're not in industry where the footing is not as sure, or where you can make a jump and you know you've done all the work beforehand, you could be kind of stuck, and that could be a whole lot of folks, especially if they don't try to understand, which nobody really does, by the way. Nobody understands what the real temperature really is, because there's still a lot of seek and find opportunities out there. But there's also, there's a land grab. And the land grab across all industries are those who are already employed, as you already said, Jeff. You think about it, you leverage your job search by being employed, and you go ahead and you can get ahead of the line, so to speak, because you're employed, and that's the employment bias that we've all worked off of for so long. Damien?
Yeah, no, I agree. And going back to what Jeff was saying, and what you were saying, Mark, is ageism is a very real issue within the workforce, and it can be a real hindrance in the working environment, especially if you're working for a boss that's much younger than you are, because their perception of you is, it's like, well, he's as old as my father is. I mean, how much can he learn, because he's set in his ways. And what I always encourage my candidates to think about is three words: be the answer. And when you get back to work or are at work, I said to my younger boss, my job is to make your job easier. And once I said that, then our relationship changed, because I truly meant that. And regardless of your age, if you focus on making your boss's life easier, then it ends up being a win-win situation. But again, I mean, you have to get in and into the culture and understand your job, and have the support of your boss, because when the chips are down and when the decisions are being made, it is your reputation within the company that many times is discussed, because I've been there at a conference room table where they go through employees name by name and they talk about them and about their abilities going forward. And, you lay this one off and I'll lay that one off. Many times, personal scores are settled that we as employees and job seekers will never know about. But again, got to be prepared, because it's going to happen to you. If not now, at some point in your career.
Yeah, and if I've always said, job search is a lifestyle, and you're best serving your the employer, or thinking about the way that you should have served an employer, is that you've got to be the prescription to the job description. That's just flat way it is, and you need to be able to position yourself that way. But I think, Jeff, you are itching to say something,
Yeah,
because I can see your nonverbals all say, "Give it to me, give it to me." Go ahead, Jeff.
and conversely, I have to also say that job hunters cannot outsource responsibility for their careers to their employers,
Right.
because too many of you do. And you think if you do a great job, they're going to love you up, you're going to move up the ladder, and you're going to have great success.
Yeah.
How many more times do you have to get hit in the head to believe that this is a lie? And it's a lie we have indoctrinated ourselves with, because from the time that we were little in school, we've been trained for factory life. And this is really what we are, is in factories now. And when the bell rings, we're allowed to go home, just like we were in school. And we're told to sit at our desks, shut up, do what we're told, regurgitate a bunch of things when we tell you to, or else.
Yeah,
And
pretty
that
much.
obedience thing affects how you perform for yourself.
Mm-hmm. That's absolutely right.
And for yourself, you have to think like the CEO of your own business. And you've got a board who's your wife, husband, partner, kids, other family members, the dogs, the cats, everyone in your family, you have a responsibility to as the chairman of the board. And when you give your power away to your employer, if you don't place yourself first, thank you, Rose, unless you place yourself first, you're always going to wind up being last.
Yeah, and I think that, and you're right. And I think I don't think there's a better way to say it, but in a shorter way, in saying that our natural propensity is that we want to be sentimental to people that's paying us. And really, we can't afford to be sentimental because ultimately they don't have that fiduciary responsibility to us that we think we do. And that's why the better job seeker, and as it looks, after a year, if something's not going as well, or you think maybe that time, that clock has sped a little faster than you thought, it's time to move on. And you can remain in control of your career that way. Damien?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think the example of thinking like and being responsible for yourself as your own CEO is a critical way to think about yourself as you go through. Another thing is if you can get the reputation with where you work as an early adapter in terms of programs that they're trying or various other things, that gives you a leg up because it creates your reputation as being someone who is with it, willing to learn, can take on new tasks while maintaining the same high quality of everything else that you're currently doing at work. And the other thing is when it comes to training, there is tons of free courses that you can take on the internet on your time. And perhaps if you get your work done and you have a little bit of time at work, your boss may or may not mind or notice that you're taking a course to improve yourself while you're getting paid. But no matter what, the responsibility does not shift. It is your job and it's your responsibility at all times because you will be called into account in terms of how you spent your time on your job. And if you cannot show a consistent upward movement in terms of your skill set, you will not be as competitive as somebody who is doing that. And OPS, you can learn at any stage of your life. You can be an early adapter at any stage of your life. And if you are in the top 5% of what you do within your industry, opportunities are going to come to you. I have yet to have to apply for a job my entire career. Opportunities have come to me, and I'm grateful for that. But the ability to retrain, retool, and be so far ahead of the pack that they can't even see your dust is the greatest job security in the world.
So, Jeff, I know you have something to add. Go ahead.
I'm one of those guys who signals it.
Yes.
And the extra thing I would add on to that, because everything you've said is right, I believe that others have to know about it too.
Yeah.
It's not just about internal to your organization, it's external as well, which on LinkedIn, they're creating creator mode designed to encourage people to create and to share and to promote themselves on the platform is part of what I encourage people to do. I remember years ago, a dear friend of mine was a quant with a bank that has long since disappeared. And our strategy for him growing in his career was to get on the speaker circuit and thus be on panels around the country. And once he did that, suddenly the real executive search firms start showing up and presenting him with MD opportunities at other banks. And he goes there, he's successful. Suddenly, the big four, or at that time it was the big six, start approaching him for roles. He makes partner, moves on to the next organization, takes over the operations in another country, all because he became celebrity. We live in a celebrity culture too. And as much as we're being ingrained, like in the factory, keep your nose to the grindstone, work hard, do a good job. We all know incompetent people who've moved up.
Yeah.
So we got to recognize that there's another dimension too, and that's about the cult of personality. Marketing, we have a responsibility for marketing ourselves and promoting ourselves, and then backing it up with substance.
Yeah, you merged well into the next lane of topics.
Ooh.
You did that quite smoothly. I need some butter right now. But Damien, what are some of your strategies for people who need, to be specific, people who are in the white collar sector, that they're in a highly competitive job market. There's not the lab grab. But I want to do something first. I do want to go to some of the comments that we got here. Welcome Rose Arthur, who's joining us. Simone is joining us, as she usually does lately. So she has a question, and maybe I should go to that first. Is what about job security? I believe you are the security to anything you put in the work to be successful. Your thoughts? What Simone said, Damien?
Yeah, absolutely right. And I've said it before, and I believe it with all my heart. Job security comes from within. Mm-hmm. It is your transferable skill set that is the key to your future success. And it's the one thing that an employer can't take away from you. They can take away your career, they can empty your rice bowl, but they can't take away your transferable skills. Between that and being visible in your marketplace so that, as Jeff said, people know what you're doing and know what you're about, again, you will rise within your industry. And one of the biggest things is you need to, because I know I had to, and I got stomped on for actually doing this in one job, rise above the fear and look above your cubicle and look at your industry and maximize LinkedIn, write articles, connect with people, go to trade shows, do whatever it takes to become visible above and beyond where you work now so that you gain a positive reputation in the industry that you do, first for the type of person that you are, second for your transferable skills, and three, because as I said earlier, you're an early adapter, you're someone who's moving forward quickly, and you're the type of person that any company worth their salt would like to employ.
Yeah, and I'm going to go back to what Jeff said about being an older worker and ageism. Many times, part of our MO is that we are claiming to be old school, but very slow and unflexible in the way that we move towards the new tools, which the employers are kind of looking at and looking to see if you are that kind of guy that can move from A to B in a hurry.
And the other part of what I spoke about was ageism toward younger workers too.
Yes.
The Zoomers, Gen Z, they're just like the boomers personality-wise. They will work like animals. And all they care about is treat us with a degree of respect. Don't tell us we got to work our way up, because someone else is going to hire us.
Mhm.
So just treat us with respect. Don't treat us like, children, even though that's our habit, because we look at them and they go, oh, my son's age. But you got to treat folks with respect for the staff level individuals, so that this way they feel appreciated. And then you're not going to wind up losing them too.
Yeah, I prefer working with a lot of the young people because I try to adapt as quick as I possibly can. Jeff, you do as well. You actually beat me to the punch practically every time, except for the live stream. But over the years, you beat me to the punch as far as it. But you understand the game and understand people. Is that the more ways you figure out the communication aspect, the way people listen, the more people will be willing to listen. And a lot of times, young or old, the difference is that younger people are very, as I talked about earlier, they're very unsentimental about their job. They're not going in ready to bring the pictures of mom and dad and bring their case of water to work like they're going to be there forever. They're looking at their certificates, the new certificate they got in web development, instead of the picture they have of the kids and the family. Damien?
Yeah, absolutely. And each generation, as they go on, have different work ethics and different skills. But I think the trick is to relate to them like you would relate to anybody else. Find out what their strengths are, maximize their strengths as you work with them, and minimize their weaknesses, because that's what a team is all about. And sometimes the way that they think may not be the way that you would think, but that's okay. I mean, if you're going to have a diverse and inclusive culture, that includes age, generation, and all of the other things that go into diversity. And if you manage it and are managed appropriately, it makes for a much richer and more creative and vibrant work environment.
Yeah, I think that the surveys that we've been looking at recently, not only that younger people, particularly, they're one of the first are being intolerant of a workplace that's lacking diversity and that's lacking choices, and they want everyone to have a voice in it. But as well, Jeff, there are those who are kind of still trying to turn the corner and trying to figure out, how can I mosey into this new economy, new workplace thing easier when there is no real easy way to do it.
So, are we speaking of an older worker or a younger
Well, you can
worker?
speak to anybody you want to this particular point.
So, for the younger worker right now, the college grad, you were hopefully did something in the last year or two of school
Mhm.
to make connections with faculty, with other students, with students who are ahead of you in graduation.
And
And
by the
the
way, you're making the point universally now because the college graduate has moved up from 18 to 24 to 25 to 34 as far as getting a bachelor's. So you're speaking to a whole lot more folks than you think. Go ahead.
Thank you. And thus, the issue comes down to, in a market where you may not have significant experience, you need to be able to cut the line in some way. So if you think about nightclubs back in the day, there's the
Mhm.
front door, the back door, and you want to start looking at the side door to get in,
Mhm.
not just the front and the back door.
Right.
I remember when my wife and I adopted our son from Kazakhstan. We
Mm.
flew there in January of 2002, a few months after 9/11. And the way we had to come out of Kazakhstan was through Moscow.
Mm.
I'll spare a lot of the gory details, but one thing that we had been told is that when you get to customs in Moscow, there's going to be a long line. And for you, as parents of a young child, you walk to the front.
Mhm.
Now, as Americans, we hear that and we go, are you sure? because no one's going to give you a pass. And we get to the airport, there's a line of about 500 people. Each line.
Mm-hmm.
Each line is 500 people. And the people at the back of the line are waving us to the front. And everyone, because we look like Americans, you can't hide that fact.
Yeah.
The clothing is different. So they recognize us as not being Russian.
Mm-hmm.
And we get to the front of the line, and the person at the very front says, "Here." And we stand at the front of the line. And this is amazing to us.
Yeah.
Now, where you can, folks, where you can cut the line, where you learn the rules of how the firm operates and have an introduction, this serves you.
Yeah.
It makes it easier. You don't have to be another fish in the pond jumping on that one hook that's been cast into the water and all the fish are trying to get on it.
Mm-hmm.
And only one does, and it may or may not be you. So find ways to cut the line, get to the front, use the side door, the back door. If you want to use the front door, that's okay. But don't have expectations that if you cast out thousands of resumes, you're going to get thousands of interviews. All you are is a spammer. You know that.
Yeah.
So do things that make yourself advantaged where you can. It helps.
Yeah. And the golden calf are the referrals. It really is. If somebody says, cut to the front, here, I got the pathway. And, you've got to be willing to look at ways to get in there. And that sometimes mean that just because you get to know one person in one company, why not 15 people in the same company? A lot of times people want to cast a wide net instead of looking for a deeper net and getting to the right person in a deeper way rather than trying to get to the first person. I love this comment here that Simone says that I focus on willingness and drive to get things done, not what someone looks like if they tell you their age. And, we like that here amongst the gray brigade here. But, but
I'm 24. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. Okay, you already gave it away by your last example. But nevertheless, we're coming to the top of the hour. And Jeff Altman, we thank you very much for joining this conversation. And you were readily available, ready to go. Of course, I knew that anything to do with talking, we got Jeff in the back pocket there. But what you got coming up next? Anything that people need to know about, need to watch you for?
Yeah, I have a new video course coming out on Udemy. It's already up on Skillshare.
Awesome.
It's like Final Interview Preparation is the working title of the course. I'm also speaking to a networking group in Northern New Jersey. You can always reach out to me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/IN/the Big Game Hunter and follow me because I put out a lot of content.
Yes.
It's a lot you can learn.
Thousands and thousands of historical stuff. He's been online doing this since 2007, 2008, right?
My first YouTube video was in 2008.
Yeah,
and
so he's an OG in the space here. Damien, what you got coming up?
Yeah, I have a couple seminars that are coming up later in the month, and folks are welcome to join us every Thursday night at Professionals in Transition on Zoom. So thank you, and Jeff, thank you for joining us. It's great to see you. This is Jeff is somebody that has 7,000 YouTube segments. Did I read that correctly?
Just under. I think it's 69 and change.
Oh, well,
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah, we'll give you a pass on the second.
Yeah, really.
The blog has more than 11,000 posts on it.
Yeah, well, so you've got a library of resources there with Jeff. Be sure you follow him at least. If not, write him a note and connect with him and let him know how much he helped you during the show. Meantime, this is the Modern Job Search Checklist. We thank you very much for joining us. Each week, we're here on Fridays at 1 o'clock. Be sure that you're, watching the chat comments as well as some of the things that we say, because a lot of clues are there as to how you can proceed and how other people are, and connect with those people who've participated in the chat as well. We stream to YouTube, LinkedIn, and also my Facebook page if you're connected with me there. In the meantime, I got a Clubhouse coming up on Monday. I don't know, Jeff, if you're using Clubhouse yet. I think you are. I think I saw you in the chat.
Yep. The next one is Green Room on Spotify.
Hey, but I don't know if we'll have access to that one yet. But the way that they're moving, and you got to pay to play for them. But anyway, yeah, Clubhouse Monday, 6 p.m. Central, 7 o'clock Eastern. I also, if you check my LinkedIn profile, the new slide share that I put up there about remaining in job search mode, check it out. In the meantime, we thank you very much for joining us here. Join us back next Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 o'clock Central. You guys have a great weekend, and thank you very much.